Our international partnership is also very important for Afghanistan. Afghanistan political stability cannot be achieved unless there is a long-term engagement of the international community beyond 2014, and that commitment will send a strong signal that 2014 is not the year of the end game, that the people should wait, and when that time has arrived, then they will start repositioning themselves into influence in Afghanistan, using the means of violence rather than to use the means of diplomacy and cooperation. So that is, these are the very key and fundamental goals that were set. What is happening today in all these fronts, whether we are making any real efforts in order to translate those goals into the practical terms. I think this is the first time that in 2010, after the series of discussion and conferences in London, in Kabul, and other places, the international community aligned themselves behind these goals. The transition process is today a reality. It is taking place. The first tranche of transition is announced. The second tranche is announced. There is the challenges of transition is real, as Minister Jalali mentioned. But it started. And why it is important in terms of the political process? Because transition has a powerful signal for the spoilers, for the insurgency. And that powerful signal is that with the transition, send a signal that Afghanistan is not occupied, the international forces will leave, and Afghanistan will become a sovereign country. And those who are mobilized and recruited because of the presence of international forces and because of that sense that these forces will not leave, that created a huge basis for recruitment by the insurgency in Afghanistan. The second important issue was the political process. I think many of you remember that in London, the first concept of peace process and reintegration was presented. There was a wider support of the international community. There was a peace jargon that laid down the basic recommendation that how this process should move forward. And today we are just a year that the High Peace Council has started its established and systematically focusing on the peace, reconciliation, and reintegration efforts. Yes, there is always room for improvement. There is always criticism. We do agree with those criticisms, shortcomings, but at the same time, we have to realize that this is a very complex and complicated process. It is not, it do not have one dimension. It is multidimensional. It is related to so many different, and the success depends on so many other areas that if we make progress, then the peace process will also make progress. The peace process also provides an opportunity and a powerful message. And that message is those people who want to achieve their goals through non-violence means have an opportunity to leave the battleground, join with this political process, and participate in the rebuilding of Afghanistan. And I think one of the things that we were not very effective, that was the strategic communication, the way we can mobilize people behind not a peace project, but a peace process that can be transformed into a peace movement. We are all Afghan from all segments of the society, can be part of a process which will benefit everybody equally and justly. That this process should not be seen that we bring one side and then we ignore others. That will not be the peace. And at the same time, we should not say the peace is just the absence of war. There is so many other grievances that fuel the continuation of conflict in Afghanistan. there are local grievances, there are disputes, there are competition between the powerful individual for using the government or the state power for achieving the material access to the material resources. So all those factors require a strategy or a policy that is broad, that is inclusive, but at the same time, there are some principles that was widely agreed, both by Afghans, by our international partners. But the important thing is that we have to implement them. The first and foremost important principle is that this process should be led by Afghans. And it should be an Afghan-led process. But it should be supported both by our regional partners and international community as well. The second important principle is the Afghan Constitution. Something that the people, although there will be reservation about the Constitution, but basically no country will achieve stability unless there is a framework. And that framework provides equal opportunity for everybody through a democratic process to participate in the power sharing processes. So that is also important. But that doesn't mean that there are people in the civil and opposition of Afghanistan that will have reservation about the Constitution. There are others but any changes in the Constitution that has to be brought through a constitutional methods of change. It is not that those changes should be brought through a deal, because that will send a very negative signal. Thirdly, I think the international community has made a significant amount of investment in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is not the Afghanistan of 10 years ago. You can see in Afghanistan a new generation of young leaders. You can see that a new generation of young women and boys are graduating from universities, from schools, from many different colleges, from outside Afghanistan, from inside Afghanistan. And I think that is the biggest asset, and that is the biggest outcome of the investment in Afghanistan. So we should not ignore them, and that is a real asset that can help Afghanistan to become a peaceful country. The freedom of media, I think that is another important development that took place in Afghanistan, because that will allow Afghans to debate openly. And if you don't have the opportunity to debate openly, then they will fight. So I think that is also an important achievement that has to be preserved, and it should be expanded, deepened, and made it more effective. Because sometimes freedom of media, of freedom of expression, is not just to say, just to criticize, but you have to also offer a solution. And also you have to adhere to the principles of the freedom of expression and freedom of media and all these things. So on the sector of health, education, communication, and all these areas, there are some very good progress that are being made. So the reason that the principle is agreed that we should not get back to the situation that we make a deal through the peace process with the Taliban, that all those progresses is reversed. So that is something that nobody wants in Afghanistan. And even those people who are conservative, living in the rural areas of Afghanistan, even those people in areas where the Taliban has more control or the other insurgent group has more control, that is out of fear that they are not saying something. But in fact, when you talk with them in an environment when they are out of that fear environment, then they would say that they will not accept. They have seen once the role of Taliban. They don't want to see it once again. But at the same time, you have to find a way that how you can get Afghans not to be used by others against their own country. So that opportunity and that political environment has to be provided for everybody, that instead to push them into the corner, that others will use them, arm them, and send them back to fight in Afghanistan, but to accommodate them, to engage them, and also to bring them back into, to integrate them back to the Afghan society. Our approach to the peace and reconciliation is based both on the top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. On the top-down approach, we are focusing on the three main groups of insurgency. All of them, or the leadership of all of them, are fortunately or unfortunately based on the other side of the border in Pakistan. And to negotiate with those who have the authority, who will have a clear identity, and they are willing to negotiate to come to a political agreement or settlement in Afghanistan. This change was brought because of the lessons of the past 1 year, and unfortunately that was a very costly experience. We lost the chair of the High Peace Council, Professor Jalali, and I think that the setback was very strong. The goal of the spoilers for his resignation was also very clear. It was of threefold. The first, aiming to stop the peace process, because the insurgency and the spoilers in the region, they know that if the war is continuing, if the conflict and military operation is continuing, they will not lack to recruit more fighters. They can always, there will be grievances, there will always reason that they can recruit more fighters. But when it comes to the peace, they will be stripped from their excuses, that using those excuses for continuation of the war. And for that reason, those changes were made that we should only negotiate with those who have an address, those who are authorized by their leaders, and they also denounce links with Al-Qaeda and join with the peace talks. Some of those principles or those conditions are not preconditions. Those are a condition that has to be considered throughout the process. And for that reason, the High Peace Council is now working on a new way forward. And that new way forward is focusing on three very specific levels. The first level is engaging with the leadership of the insurgent. The second is those people who you understand, maybe in the middle class of the leadership, that they don't want to continue. And I think with some of the efforts, this transition, the Jirga that was successful, the Bonn Conference, and the notion that the negotiation will take place with the leadership. Some of the fighters is now questioning themselves that why we should continue this fighting while our leaders are talking. So I think there are some tactical gains, but we are yet far away of any strategic gains. Reintegration has taken some good pace and accelerated, particularly sorry. And we all know that last year was a very turbulent year for Afghanistan. We started with the parliamentary crisis, followed with the Kabul bank issue, and also the differences with the IMF. And then last year was also coupled with spectacular attack on senior government officials. We lost so many of our friends. They also made those attacks in order to draw the attention, the media attention, and to send a signal of fear among the population. But we are entering into 2012 with a much better situation than the last year when we started all these efforts. First, we leave behind those parliamentary crises. We came to agreement with the IMF, and the Kabul bank issue is now to some extent resolved, and the efforts will continue to address that. We had a very successful Jirga, where the Afghans came together and they endorsed the strategic partnership with the international community for the long term. There was the success of the Bonn conference also sent the signal that Afghanistan will not be abandoned once again, and they will remain engaged. And this is the first year, because of the combination of the two reasons, the attention to Afghanistan and the right policy in place, and the alignment behind the Afghan legal policy, that the trend of insecurity since 2004 is changed to a positive direction. Because every year, the level of violence would increase in the same time of this year and gradually increase up to the autumn season. But this year, this is a small change, but it might be significant, but it is very fragile, and it should be sustained, that this trend is going in the reverse. Last year at this time, the insecurity was spreading to the provinces where it was secured before, in the north, northeast, northeast. But this year, through the reintegration, many of those provinces returned back to the secure areas. If you look to the situation in even in Kandahar, in Uruzgan, in Herat, in Badghis, in Faryab, in Saripur, in Babylon, and also in Badashan and Kunduz. It was a very difficult and complicated situation, but this year, with many of those who were fighting, and they joined with the peace process, the security box is expanding, and there is more freedom for movement, there is more opportunity for rebuilding efforts in the country. So I think those are some of the initial impact of the joint efforts in a coherent strategy that is put in place. But I must say that the challenges are huge, as Minister Jalali has mentioned. We have particularly 2015 will be a crucial year for Afghanistan. There will be the parliamentary election will be there. The effect of the drawdown, both economically and also on security-wise, it will be felt more strongly. It will be the time where all the political elite will reposition themselves, and there will be a struggle on that. I think for that purpose, from that point of view, it is also a very crucial year. I should say that through the Peace and Reintegration Program, you can see, look to the details through my paper. I will send it to the institute so that you can go. I will not touch them. It is a comprehensive approach. It will look to the grievances resolution. It will look into the regional cooperation. It will look to the contact and strategic communication. It will look to the connection with the other initiative of the government. It is also looking into the community recovery and to the reintegration aspect. And this is the first time that, as Jalali said, mentioned, that there is no budget allocation for the provinces and districts. But through this program, for the first time, we made it possible that the governors and the district administrators should have access to the budget for their own, for the development work that we carry out in the provinces. I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senior. That is a very optimistic way forward, sort of structurally delineating the various aspects of the I would call it the going ahead process. And at this stage, I would like to open the floor for discussions, and would welcome questions from the floor. My only request is that please identify yourself and please tell us to whom the question is addressed.
Thank you. Thank you very much for very impressive set of presentations. I'm Rohan Gunaratna. I'm very delighted to see two old friends of mine, Minister Stanekzai and Professor Ali Jalali. I thought that there was one component that was missing in both the presentations, and I think that is the most crucial aspect when you look at the future security of Afghanistan. That is Pakistan. You have done a lot to fight the Taliban on Afghan soil, and Minister Stanekzai has done a lot to try to reach out to the Taliban. But can you elaborate on your engagement with Pakistan? What are the challenges you are facing? What are the opportunities you are facing? And do you really think that once US and European forces withdraw, you will be able to withstand that onslaught coming across that border? Thank you.
Shall we take them one by one? This is an important question, and then we'll start from.
Well, thank you very much, Rohan. Good to see you. And, well, the reason we did not say, well, I actually did not speak much about Pakistan, because I thought that it is an issue that will be discussed tomorrow at a different panel. In the interest of time, I did not talk about it. But Pakistan is a major, major factor in bringing peace to Afghanistan. Not only Pakistan, actually. Always Afghanistan was at peace, but there was no interference on the side. When neighbors actually decided that Afghanistan should stay in peace, it was peace. And therefore, Pakistan is important. However, during the past 10 years, there was many contacts, many discussion with Pakistan. But we have to first change the calculation of Pakistan. If you do not change the calculus of Pakistan regarding Afghanistan, it will be difficult for Pakistan to change its. The several issues that actually shapes the attitude of Pakistan toward Afghanistan. There's no doubt that the insurgents have their basis in Afghanistan. In many cases, when I was in the government, and in many cases, we knew that somebody's come from across the border. We gave the addresses, but we did not get much cooperation. That's because we have to first change the culture. And in terms of Pakistan, well, first of all, they believe that, okay, the Indian influence in Afghanistan is something that undermines the interest, legitimate interest of Pakistan. Well, sometimes I talk to our friends in Pakistan that, look, during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, I was part of the resistance. We were in Pakistan. Pakistan helped Afghan very much. They helped the refugees, they helped the resistance. But, because of this attitude now, today, that Pakistan is helping those who are coming across the border. If you ask Afghans in Afghanistan, any party, say, who is the enemy, who is friend? They will say India's enemy, Pakistan's friend. While during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, India actually stood with the Kabul government, with the Soviet government. But why did you have wasted that?
You just reverse the other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pakistan is an enemy, India is an enemy.
Thank you, I am reassured.
So this is something that, despite all the investment Pakistan made with that, why should we, perceive negatively Afghanistan? But on the other hand, I think as long as the Pakistan has taken India as an enemy, they will base their strategy on three things: nuclear weapons, large army, and asymmetrical warfare, which categorized by religious groups. So as long as Pakistan makes a difference between good terrorists, bad terrorists, good extremists, bad extremists, this situation will continue. On the other hand, yes, I think there is in order to change the cultures of Pakistan, three things should happen. First, a certain level of stability in Afghanistan to convince Pakistan that Afghanistan can make it. And second, the improvement in the capacity of Afghan government can win the mobilization of people in Afghanistan who do not want the Taliban to come back, but they do not stand up against them on behalf of a government that cannot protect them. So it is the government of Afghanistan should create that kind of a capacity that to win the people back. And third is the future of the international community in Afghanistan. This highlights the importance of long-term strategic partnership with the United States. This could change the continent. Unless that happens, and unless there is uncertainty about the future of Afghanistan, Pakistan will always hedge their bets, not only Pakistan, but others. So it is not a matter of bilateral issues. It is something that has domestic issues, both in Pakistan and Afghanistan. It has regional issues, regional dimension, and also international dimensions.
I will just take the last word of Professor Jalali, that it is the matter of change of policy toward Afghanistan. That is fundamental, that how they see Afghanistan, whether they are still looking into Afghanistan as a strategic jet, or they will change that policy toward Afghanistan to move it toward a friendly Afghanistan, that they can live in peace with each other. I think this issue was debated in all the forums, and always when there is a Afghan delegation, Pakistani delegation is present at the same forum, then there is the blame game is starting, and then finger pointing is starting toward each other. That is not new, but now you can see from the internal politics in that country that the blame game within their system is started. What we were saying several years ago, that words are now you can hear from those politicians, ex-military officers, and senior government officials, that how they are perceiving their own system that is operating a state within a state. That is the difficulty. And sometimes countries, in order to divert the attention from their own internal problem, they have to have a cause in a say to mobilize the support behind their own agenda, so that can be a kind of a cover for their own issues that they cannot handle it internally. So Afghanistan becomes such an issue as well, and for Pakistan. But from our side, I think we were very consistent in terms of that. We realized that we are neighbors, we cannot live without each other, and we have to find a way to live in peace with each other. Sometimes some people in Afghanistan wish that we were in the center, in the middle of an ocean, that we didn't have any neighbor, because that could have helped us to achieve stability. But we are not there. And we were very consistent in terms of that. Try our bilateral, multilateral, international, all the channels that to improve relations with Pakistan, to build the trust. For the peace building process, we have established the very high-level commission between the two countries, and that was the proposal of the Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani. And in those joint commission for peace, there was all the senior leadership of Afghanistan and Pakistan was part of those that commission, both from the Pakistan side, the military and the civilian government side, from the head of the army to the prime minister, to the minister of foreign affairs, and also the ministry of and their intelligence agency, and also from our side was the same kind of a commission. But our problem is that there is always very good talk, but how we can move those talks to work. That is the kind of a difficulty that we have. And I also agree that everybody was waiting to see that 2014 is the end game. And that wait for the end game is something that dangerously affected the security dimension in Afghanistan. And I think if, as we get more confidence in our relation, in our strategic partnership, in the commitment of the international community, and that there is no rush for the peace process, that something has to achieve without looking into the large investment that is made in the long-term future of Afghanistan, I think we will be in a more difficult situation, and we should not repeat the mistake of 90s. The mistake of 90s was that with the efforts and the sacrifice of Afghans, Soviet Union occupied Afghanistan and they were forced to withdraw. But what happened? We entered into a civil war. And we should not repeat the same mistake this time. And for that reason, this is very important that we make successful efforts to implement the commitment of the Bonn Conference. And I think this year for Afghanistan is extremely crucial that the Chicago Conference succeed for the security support. As Jalali said mentioned, that will send another powerful signal that the Afghan security forces will support it beyond 2015 until that the Afghan economy and the Afghan capacity is there, that they can stand on its own. In July, there will be a conference on the macroeconomy and also the fiscal sustainability of on Afghanistan in Tokyo. And I think preparation for that conference and practical commitment of the international community will also send another powerful signal toward the change of policy, that Afghanistan will not be left alone. That is also very much important. And lastly, there is another gathering in Kabul that will focus on governance for building the trust of the international community that the Afghan government will take decisive steps in terms of improving governance and also fighting corruption.
Let's start with Prof. Moni. We'll take 3 by 3 then. Prof. Moni.
Thank you for very comprehensive presentations. Does Kabul see any shift in the Taliban position from what it was? Particularly Mullah Omar's Eid message, now their agreement to open an office in Qatar and engage in negotiations. The death of Osama bin Laden, which takes away the commitment made to Al-Qaeda that we must be protecting you all the time. And the latest is the coming together of the TTP, the Pakistani Taliban, and Mullah Omar. In fact, Kota Shura almost is entering into an alliance with Pakistani Taliban. What do these signals indicate and how Kabul is interpreting it? Because much would depend upon, there are various interpretations by US is reading it in its own way, others are reading their own way. If there is a shift, the statement of Mullah Omar was really very significant, even in terms of internal composition of the new Afghan state. I'm sure somewhere Taliban also understand that they cannot carry on as they have been carrying on. Internationally, they would not be acceptable even if they capture Kabul this way. So in the light of all these experiences, is there a thinking on what these Taliban groups are really up to and are aiming at?
just take two more questions. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Farhat Aisha. I'm the Deputy High Commissioner of Pakistan. It has been heartening to see my Afghan sisters and brothers here today. We have, since it's a seminar, having an open view, having an open discussion of all various of opinions and positions. I just have certain observations to some of the points that were made during the presentations. Pakistan have very, very deep historical, traditional ties, and myself having Afghan roots. We have so much of closeness that it's very rare elsewhere in the world. If there is one village, a border is dividing it into two halves. Same relatives living on this side of the border and the same family living on the other side of the border. It's very, very unique and close relationship. We have been hosting millions of Afghan refugees till today, the largest number of refugees that a country has hosted historically without much international aid. And till today, we have, I'm not here to calculate all the contributions of Pakistan. Pakistan is a country which has suffered most because of the instability in Afghanistan. Pakistan is a country which has given more lives, more sacrifices of life of our civilians and soldiers than all the NATO forces in approach, not a military solution. A Marshall Plan like a comprehensive effort of the international community is needed in that part of the world, not military strikes or targeted strikes. We have always been forthcoming in controlling the borders. We did make a suggestion either to fence the border, we have put in place a personal identification checking system, very latest with the help of US. We have installed that system on our border to control the movement of unwanted people. But there have been some reluctance on the other side of the border to fence the border or to replicate the same system on the other side. I had noted some of the points. I think I thought I should make some comments which Pakistan has also articulated our positions that we should have a negotiated solution, and now the US is also coming to negotiations with Taliban at this point in time. The loss of Professor Abani was a big loss to Pakistan. He was a friend of Pakistan, and we have, I think that peace process which was going on suffered a lot because of that incident. These were just few points which came to my mind, which I thought I should also share here with all the audience, because Pakistan was being discussed and again.
Thank you for placing the Pakistan point. Just take one more question this round and allow them to answer and come back to the next.
Hi, I'm Augustine Antoine. I'm a journalist with Channel News Asia. So I just reached out to my contacts in Kabul to to get some questions, and I got one here that came from Kabul just before the forum started. It's actually from the Provost and Vice President of the American University of Afghanistan, Dr. Don Deacle. I was expecting something on education, but it's actually about security. Her question is, ask them if the Afghan Police Protection Forces will be ready to take over security in 2013, replacing all private security firms. So if I were to rephrase that question, over the remaining 24 months, or in her case 2013, what steps are being undertaken to bring this to a reality? And since it's coming from education, picking up on the question from the Minister, you talked about human capital, a lot of young graduates are coming out. What efforts are being undertaken to prevent the brain drain? You have to create the jobs for these young graduates, and the American University is one example. And finally, we've had brief references to the other side of the border, and I'm glad I came after the Pakistani official. I interviewed Pakistani generals at Shangri-La Dialogue, and they say the problem comes from Afghanistan. So Pakistani soldiers are also dying at the border. So again, can we cut to the chase and get to the crux of the issue? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So three questions.
I think the first one was very comprehensively answered in Professor Jalali's presentation itself, the capability and the difficulties of the Afghan security forces taking on the responsibility. So I'll leave that as done, and the other two questions, and then would you like to go first? Well, just to change it.
Regarding your question, whether there is any policy changes in the Taliban or the other groups, I think there was, until the peace jargon, there was the efforts were more in the region. Efforts in the region were focused on how to prevent that to happen. But after the Jirga largely endorsed that Afghanistan required good relation with its neighbor, with its regional countries, and at the same time with the international partners, I think there are some shift and some changes. The shift in changes is that if truly the international community translate their commitment into practical action, I think people will not wait for another 10 years. And for that reason, they will reposition themselves in order to be part of the political system. This is one. Second, I would like to mention that after the death of Osama bin Laden, there is growing fear among the leadership who are in the hideouts that they will be one day captured or killed or whatever. And at the same time, even if they come to the power, how they will run the country. So that is also another realization. But at the same time, we should also not forget that every side, and particularly the side which is more under pressure, they will think 2 times ahead of us. And for that reason, we have to be cautious of the policy that they will engage in the discussion, but they will not get to any agreement. That is one issue of cautiousness that we have to be. Whether they will have that freedom, that they can come to a concrete set of agreement and become part of the political system. On the other hand, there is a competition is ongoing among the different groups that after this announcement of office, this office is not announced by the US. Actually, this was something that the High Peace Council has made trips to many regional countries in order to pursue or to discuss with the countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia, like Turkey, like Afghanistan, and others, who would allow or provide an opportunity for the Afghans to discuss and talk with each other. And I think that also sent a signal that the other groups who are not yet entered into negotiation, they should do so. And actually, that is taking place, and we had just last week some very constructive discussion with the Hizb Islami in Kabul. Our aim is that we cannot open offices around the world for different groups. There should be eventually all these discussion and negotiation should come to Kabul, into Afghanistan, and that has to be taking place there. And about the regrouping and the rejoining of those architecture on the other side of the border. The TTP, the Haqqani and the Taliban network, they had the meeting and they said that you don't fight in Afghanistan, we're going to fight in Pakistan, but we are going to fight in Afghanistan. I think those are the intelligence games that will be coming and going, and we have to monitor the situation, how those development will practically impact on the security and also the development in Afghanistan. But we are very keen that we want and we are prepared anytime for constructive dialogue with Pakistan, with Iran, with any other country so that if there is legitimate concern, we have to address those legitimate concern. But on the other hand, if something is very obvious that all your armed opposition, the leadership is based somewhere else, not in very tribal areas and not controlled, but most of those people are settled in the settled areas. And for that reason, I think we really need both sides to move this dialogue, and our efforts is ongoing that to resume the discussion on the peace process with Pakistan, and I think that is important for us. There are some changes, but those changes should be received very cautiously.
Thank you. I think when we go to signals, I think we have to put them in perspective. Signals are there always. However, you have to realize what are the motives of the Taliban at this time to get engaged seriously in settlement negotiation. At a time that the US is leaving, the NATO is leaving, and the more troops leave Afghanistan, the position of the international force are weaker. In Afghanistan, the country, the government is still, there's mistrust with the government. People are not happy. So what are the motivation for the Taliban? You have to think about this when you interpret the signals. The signal is there, maybe these are for tactical gains, or maybe eventually that will translate into some kind of a sincere approach. So you have to put everything in perspective. When you go to Pakistan attitude, I think there's one problem always which actually comes to mind in Afghanistan, that Pakistan plays victim always. They believe that this is a war of somebody else and they are cooperating. This is also Pakistan. The terrorists also in Pakistan. Actually, Pakistanis suffered, yes, not because they are fighting somebody else's war, because they are fighting their own war. So they should not actually, tell the English, we are doing a favor because fighting your war, or doing Afghans, you are a favor fighting your war. This is not. Even during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, we were desperate to convince Pakistani friends that we have to help those who are going to fight and eventually build Afghanistan, not those who are following your interest in the future. This is something that we have to, let's call spade a spade. And on the other hand, yes, there's no doubt that Pakistan helped Afghanistan very much. And the refugees, I was there and I have seen it that Pakistani was very generous with them. In the hospitality. The Afghans actually, thank them in generosity. But what happened is that after the Soviet left Afghanistan, this was Pakistan that created that fought this surrogate war in Afghanistan. Who were the Taliban? How the Taliban came to Afghanistan? in the Pakistanis themselves actually admitted, yes, that was a mistake, we supported that, and Afghans suffered. So it is not that Pakistani only suffered, Afghans suffered more. Afghans are more victimized by this war. And I always hear, I discuss it with Pakistani friends that fencing the border is something, a very, very laughable thing. If you want to prevent the infiltration, go to the source, not to the border. Because even if you fence, you cannot fence all the 2,400 kilometers of border. Even if we fence some of the road, there are always somewhere that infiltration will take place. I've seen conflict from different sides. During the Soviet occupation, I was the other side. I was trying to infiltrate into Afghanistan, the Mujahideen. And as a Minister of Interior, I was trying to seal that border against its infiltration. Believe me, it was much easier from that side to infiltrate than from this side to see. So I think you have to be very, objective about these things and look at the realities as they are, not to interpret realities in order to support a certain line of policy.
Yes. On the question about Taliban, both international community and Afghan government recently had tactical gains but strategical losses. The series of assassination of our leaders in Afghanistan, of course, gives one message, and that message is Taliban would like to morally control Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been a country that dependence over the individual is much more stronger than dependence over the institutions. So those individuals who has a roots in the society and strong roots in the society have been assassinated by Taliban to morally control Afghanistan. This is a strategical loss for us. Now about their change of perspective, I think they're playing this very smartly. Taliban are playing the game recently very smartly. Their green light to agree to open an office in Qatar, from my perspective, is just is for two reasons. First of all, they would like to get a political impunity, which they didn't have before. Taliban were introduced as a terrorist group in the world. Now you go and you give them a political impunity. It is a sign of forgiving them and giving and strengthening their access to more resources, especially making them close to the Gulf countries, means more financial and political resources will be available to them. The second thing is that they would like to access to the freedom of their prisoners, or they would like to come to a political settlement for the freedom of their prisoners. Now, if the office in Qatar will result to a peace settlement in Afghanistan, I would say no. And my reasons are, Taliban are also smart people. From here to 2014, they know that the international community will leave Afghanistan. So why they should lose an opportunity that the ground is prepared for them after 2014? Neighboring countries are reshaping themselves along with Taliban to come and influence in Afghanistan after the withdrawal happens in 2014. So even if I was Taliban, I wouldn't go for a reintegration. What we want Taliban basically is to put weapons, guns, everything away to reintegrate to the society. Why should Taliban do that? They have power, they have resources, they believe that they are the winner of this war. There are some people within our government say that there is a change of policy in Taliban in terms of their policy towards girls' education. We hear this from our ministers. It's important that we hear this from the Taliban, not from our ministers. Because our ministers, at the end of the day, what they say, there is no guarantee. What we hear in practice is different from what we hear it from Taliban. Girls' schools have been continuously attacked. Female teachers and girls have been continuously under-trained, especially female girls, students who go to school. Even there is a new culture which the true asset over the girls' students. So if this is change of policy, then what message it gives to the nation? Now, the concluding statement from my side on this thing would be that I think both Afghan government and international community is confused about the so-called peace strategy. I hope that the international community will not repeat the mistake of 1989 when the Soviets, when the peace settlement was made in Geneva, that the Afghan people, the institutions of Afghanistan, civil society in Afghanistan, opposition political parties were not involved, they were not included. My feeling is right now that even Afghan government is being marginalized in this period, the so-called peace process, because this was an initiative of Afghan government, initially, basically the president. But now the leadership of this, or the lead of this talk is with the US and the Taliban. So they're playing it very carefully and very nicely. And I think we should learn from the history, and the history tells us that any political settlement, when it's a project-based, not a process-based, and it's not inclusive, will not result peace. And we have, the history repeating itself.
I think we have just time for a quick round of short questions. 1, 2, 3, 24. That's it. Just short, very.
Surya from ISAS. Professor Jalali made some mention of residual presence of international forces, and Professor Stanekzai also mentioned that 2014 may not be the year of the end game. Would you like to clarify further on these two issues, please?
Yes.
Kindly, ordinary blogger. I just want to throw a span in the works that we've all talked about Western powers leaving Afghanistan. Now, since you're in Southeast Asia, would you be looking to any country, looking east as an example of any 8 countries in Asia that might have be good role models for you to model yourselves on in terms of reaching prosperity? I mean, the one country that comes to mind is Cambodia, which had a pretty nasty civil war. It had drug problems. It still has trafficking problems, but they've settled down and they've become relatively stable. So let's see, are there any other examples from this part of the world?
I'm Ang Sinok. I'm a member of the public in Singapore. I have 2 short questions. First question is to Professor Jalali. How significant is the sectarian issue in Afghanistan? Is the Taliban the only problem? Are there any other sectarian issues? Is there a north and south divide in the political economy of Afghanistan? My second question is to Minister Stanekzai. You mentioned geopolitical realities of the region and also 3 groups of insurgency based in Pakistan. My question is, what are the geopolitical realities of the region, and the 3 groups of insurgency based in Pakistan? What are these 3 groups? Are there other groups based in Afghanistan and in the other countries bordering Afghanistan? If all the Afghans are united, the outside groups can be defeated with international help, including the UN.
Thank you very much. But simple question. My name is Ali. I'm a layperson. Well, Prof. Mohammad, with regard to your first presentation, your keynotes, I think the question when you referred to bridging the gap, I think the gap is too small. In fact, it is the gulf. Question is, I think that may be your own. My question is that a question of the issues of reality, the question of vision for reality. Now the question is that maybe your visualization is very much one side of the coin rather than both sides of the coin. So my second question with regard to His Excellency Mohammad, with regard to your migration to that of from the peace process to the peace path. Yes, I think that what we were anticipating is too long a time. So my question is that with the Qatar convention that we expect, what will be your expectation? Not just a question of comprehensive positioning, but comprehensive, magnificence, and also significant. The three stands that come along with it, because the missing link in the problems management seems to be forthcoming for too long. Thanks a lot.
Briefly. Okay, briefly, yes. Yeah. Well, long question, but now with the residual presence, it is an issue that is going to be part of the strategic partnership with the United States, Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, if you followed the news recently, there was a consultant, Louis Jerga, in Afghanistan that has actually called on the government to approve that partnership, which actually will include the residual presence of the U.S. forces in Afghanistan. This is something that has a lot of support. It has a lot of support now because Afghanistan knows the people are living in a very tough neighborhood, and they have bad experience from the people in the area that when Afghanistan is weak, they actually exploit that situation. So this is part of the, we don't know how this pact will be, the contents, but depending on the situation in Afghanistan, the capacity of the national security forces, the level of progress in the reconciliation, the size of that force that will be present in Afghanistan will depend on many factors. It is sometimes between 5,000 to 10,000, and there are also suggestions that quite probably it will be between 20,000 to 40,000, which is a very hard sell in the United States. But this is something that is being discussed. But this is something that Afghans want. The U.S. want it because the terrorism is not going to end by 2014, and there needs to be a kind of a presence to fight terrorism and also to help Afghanistan security forces to improve further. The issue of sectarian issue, this is a myth in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, there is a myth that Afghanistan is composed of odd assortments of tribes, regions. That's a myth. The nationhood of Afghanistan is not based on tribalism or ethnicity. There's no doubt Afghanistan is composed of different tribes, different ethnicities, different regions. But the nationhood of Afghanistan is based on what Ernest Renan called it the will to persist together. Because they faced the common challenges. They lived under a similar situation in the past. And even during the civil war, during the occupation of Afghanistan, when they went outside, the refugees of Afghanistan went outside, they came back more Afghan than in the past because they realized that they are not welcome in the country that they went. The kinsmen, the Tajiks went to Tajikistan, Uzbek to Uzbekistan, Persians speaking to Iran, Pashtuns to Pakistan. They came back more united than before. There's one thing in Afghanistan. Afghanistan sometimes it is too, divided to disintegrate. It's an atomized society. You cannot, ethnically it is too intertwined that you cannot compartmentalize it. In the 19th century, the Afghans, Afghanistan borders were imposed by two empires, British Empire and the Russian Empire, in order to make it a buffer state so that to block the clashes between two titans. That country, served that purpose. But in the 20th century, they had to successfully fight both. The 1919, the British Empire, at the end of the 20th century, the other successor empire, both successfully. But this disintegrate. Even during the Civil War, you did not see a call or a move for secessionists movement to Afghanistan. All were fighting for Kabul, not for the whole region. So therefore, it's a myth that they said it is. Yes, recently you saw that there was a sectarian violence in Afghanistan or Shiite and Shias. That was not an after. Afghanistan never had a sectarian problem between Shia and Sunnis. That was from Pakistan because it was something that came from Pakistan. So therefore, bridging the gap, you know, when I say gap, it is not only the security gap. It is financial gap, it is development gap. By 2014, there is going to be a gap between the challenges facing Afghanistan, the security challenges, the threats, and the capacity to respond to it by the Afghan indigenous forces. So that gap should be filled by something. Therefore, this can be filled by two things. Either a reconciliation political settlement that will reduce the level of threat, then it will be compatible to the capacity, or residual presence of the international community to fill that gap. That's what I'm talking about. Thank
you. Just very quickly, the issue of the end game, I mentioned several times, and I also answered that question as well in my presentation. And basically, we are moving from transition to transformation. Transition is that by 2014, the combating role of the international forces will end. That responsibility will be handed over to the Afghan security forces. But there will be trainers and support to the National Army Police in Afghan national security and institution will continue beyond the 2014. And at the same time, there was a perception that 2014 is the end of international community engagement with Afghanistan, but with the Bonn II conference, with the renewed engagement, with the strategic partnership between 2015 and 2024, we are working on a scenario of transformation that Afghanistan should become a stable country. And for that reason, I say that there was perception that 2015 is the end game, but now there is a clear indication that there is a plan, that that's not the end of engagement, but we will continue, or the international community will continue to engage in Afghanistan beyond that period until we get to some result. Regarding the Qatar office and its significance or non-significance, I think one of the important issues is that the media will focus on issues that can make a news. And everything can make a news that will change the perception, and that will be discussed for a few days in the media and in every dialogue. It is the first step. It is not the last step. And it is the beginning of something. It is not the end of something. It is not actual negotiation. It is the facilitation, whether that facilitation can take place, whether we can get to the next stage, which is actually to negotiate, and with whom we should negotiate. And this negotiation should take place, as we say, that it should be not only focused on some tactical issues of releasing few prisoners and then stop it back, or something like that. If it become a process, and that process will end to some kind of a positive attitude, so the Afghans can sit with each other and they reconcile. That will be really the progress that we will make. And finally, I think we believe that the unity of Afghan people is the most strongest element in achieving peace in Afghanistan. And that is why we want everybody, for God's sake, leave Afghans with themselves. In particular, this is my message to our neighborhood. So Afghans can talk with each other. And unfortunately, if you look to the Jews' strategic location of Afghanistan, we have 5 regions, we have 5 neighbors, and every neighbor has speaking the same language as our people are speaking the same language. And everybody wants to try to influence Afghanistan through creating mistrust or divide, and then to influence Afghanistan. If that will change, then Afghanistan will become more secure.
Thank you very much. I think that was an amazing session. We got so much out of it. It's brilliant presentations, and the question and answer session drew out so much more from the presenters. So let's give them a very, very big hand. You all
Thank you, speakers, for your insights. I would like to invite Dr. Narayan to present tokens of appreciation to the panel of speakers. Ms. Fawzia Koofi. His Excellency Minister Stanekzai. Professor Ali Jalali. Ladies and gentlemen, kindly note that a copy of the keynote speech is available at the registration counter. We would now like to invite you to a tea reception just outside this function room. Please be back in 10 minutes for the second session. Thank you.